Marcus Johnson woke up at 5:30 a.m. like he did every morning. He had exactly 90 minutes to get his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, ready for school, drop her off, and make it to his job at Anderson Tech Corporation by 7:30. Being late wasn't an option. His boss had already written him up twice this month. One more strike, and he'd be fired. But that Tuesday morning, Marcus saw a pregnant woman collapse on the subway platform, and everything changed. Marcus was 34 years old, a single father raising Emma alone after his wife died from cancer 3 years ago. He worked as a data entry clerk at Anderson Tech, a massive technology company downtown. The pay wasn't great, but it covered rent, groceries, and Emma's after-school program. Barely. Every morning followed the same routine. Wake Emma. Make breakfast. Pack her lunch. Walk 8 blocks to her school. Run to catch the 7:05 subway. Arrive at work by 7:30, not a minute late. Marcus's life ran on a tight schedule because it had to. There was no room for error, no safety net, no wealthy relatives to call if things went wrong. That morning started like any other. Emma ate her cereal while Marcus made her peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She chattered about her upcoming school play where she'd play a flower. Marcus listened, smiled, reminded her to brush her teeth. They walked to school hand in hand, Emma skipping beside him. "I love you, Daddy," she said at the school entrance. "I love you more, Princess," Marcus replied, kissing her forehead. "Be good today." Then he ran. 8 blocks back to the subway station, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He made it to the platform just as the 7:05 train was pulling in. Perfect timing. He'd be at work by 7:25, 5 minutes early to grab coffee before his shift started. Marcus stepped toward the train doors as they slid open. That's when he heard a woman's voice behind him, panicked and breathless. "Help! Someone please help." Marcus turned. A young pregnant woman, maybe in her late 20s, was leaning against the subway wall. Her face was pale and sweating. Her hand clutched her very round belly. Another woman, elderly and frail, was trying to support her but couldn't hold her weight. The pregnant woman's knees buckled. She started to fall. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. He dropped his backpack and rushed over, catching the pregnant woman just before she hit the concrete platform. The subway doors closed behind him. The train pulled away. His ride to work was gone. "I've got you," Marcus said, gently lowering the woman to sit against the wall. "Are you okay? Is it the baby?" The woman's breathing was rapid and shallow. I don't know. Everything went dizzy. I can't feel my legs properly." "Someone call 911. Marcus shouted to the growing crowd around them. The elderly woman who'd been trying to help pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling now." Marcus knelt beside the pregnant woman, trying to remember the first aid training he'd taken years ago. "What's your name?" "Elizabeth," she gasped. "Elizabeth Anderson." "Okay, Elizabeth. I'm Marcus. You're going to be fine. Help is coming. How far along are you?" 34 weeks, she managed. "Too early. It's too early." "Hey, look at me," Marcus said firmly but gently. "Babies born at 34 weeks do great. But we're not there yet. You're just having a dizzy spell. Has this happened before?" Elizabeth nodded. "Low blood pressure. My doctor warned me. But I thought I could handle the subway today. I was wrong." Marcus loosened her scarf to help her breathe better. He noticed her expensive coat, her designer purse, her wedding ring that probably cost more than his car. She was clearly wealthy. But right now, she was just a scared woman who needed help. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, though it felt like hours. Paramedics loaded Elizabeth onto a stretcher. She grabbed Marcus's hand before they took her away. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "You saved us. Both of us." "Just glad I was here," Marcus said. "Take care of that baby." As the ambulance pulled away, Marcus looked at his watch. 7:40. He was already 10 minutes late. He grabbed his backpack and ran up the subway stairs to street level, pulling out his phone to call his boss as he ran the 15 blocks to work. His boss, Mr. Stevens, answered on the third ring. "Johnson, where are you?" "I'm so sorry, sir. I had an emergency. A pregnant woman collapsed on the subway platform. I had to stay until the ambulance came. I'm running to the office now. I'll be there in 15 minutes. "An emergency?" Stevens's voice was cold. "Johnson, this is the third time this month. I don't care about your excuses anymore. Come pick up your final paycheck. You're done." "Sir, please. I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. You were given clear warnings. You're terminated, effective immediately." The line went dead. Marcus stopped running, standing on the sidewalk, breathing hard. He'd just been fired. He'd lost his job for helping someone, for doing the right thing. Marcus sank onto a nearby bench, his head in his hands. How would he pay rent? How would he feed Emma? What would he tell his daughter? The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Marcus's life. He applied to dozens of jobs, but without a college degree and with a gap in his resume that required explanation, no one would hire him. His savings disappeared within days. Rent, utilities, food. He sold his TV, his laptop, anything of value, but it wasn't enough. Emma noticed something was wrong. "Daddy, why are we eating sandwiches every night?" "Because sandwiches are delicious," Marcus said with forced cheerfulness. "And they're your favorite, right?" Emma nodded but looked unconvinced. At 6 years old, she was smart enough to sense her father's stress. Marcus's landlord came knocking on day 16. Rent was due 3 days ago. Marcus: "I know, Mr. Patterson. I just need a few more days. I'm waiting to hear back from some job applications." "I've heard that before. I need the rent by Friday, or you'll need to find somewhere else to live." Marcus felt panic rising. Where would they go? He had no family nearby, no close friends with spare rooms. Homeless shelters were overcrowded. He couldn't let Emma end up in a shelter. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with bills spread before him. The math was simple and devastating. He couldn't afford to stay in their apartment. He couldn't afford to feed them properly. And he couldn't find work fast enough. He thought about the pregnant woman on the subway platform. Elizabeth Anderson. Was her baby okay? Had she recovered? Did she even remember him? Or had he just been another stranger who helped in a moment of crisis? Marcus didn't regret helping her. Even now, facing eviction and unemployment, he'd make the same choice. But he couldn't help wishing that doing the right thing didn't come with such brutal consequences. The next morning, Marcus dropped Emma at school and headed to another job interview. This one at a warehouse, overnight shift. The pay was minimum wage. Barely enough to survive, but Marcus was desperate. The interview lasted 10 minutes. The manager glanced at his resume and frowned. "You worked at Anderson Tech? Big fancy tech company. Why would you want to work here?" "I need a job," Marcus said honestly. "I have a daughter to support." "Why'd you leave Anderson Tech?" Marcus hesitated. Should he lie? Make up a story? But he'd never been good at lying. "I was fired for being late. I stopped to help a pregnant woman who collapsed on the subway. Made me miss my train." The manager raised an eyebrow. "You got fired for helping someone?" "Yes, sir." The manager shook his head. "That's rough. But I can't hire someone who was fired from their last job. Company policy. Sorry." Marcus walked out of the warehouse, feeling numb. He sat on a bench outside, watching trucks load and unload. He'd done everything right. Worked hard. Raised his daughter alone. Helped someone in need. And somehow, he'd ended up here, unemployed, nearly homeless, running out of options. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma's school. Parent-teacher conference scheduled for Friday at 3 p.m. Please confirm attendance. Marcus closed his eyes. Even Emma's school would see him as a failure now. The single dad who couldn't keep a job, who couldn't provide properly, who was about to lose their apartment. That evening, Marcus made spaghetti with the last of his groceries. Emma twirled the noodles on her fork, quieter than usual. "Daddy, are we okay?" she asked suddenly. Marcus forced a smile. "Of course, princess. Why do you ask?" "Because you seem sad. And we don't have as much food as before. And you keep looking at papers that make you frown." Marcus's heart broke. He tried so hard to shield her from the stress. But 6-year-olds notice everything. "We're going through a tough time," Marcus admitted. "But we'll be okay. I promise." Emma put down her fork and came around the table to hug him. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Emma. So much." As he held his daughter, Marcus made a silent promise. Somehow, someway, he'd figure this out. He'd find work. He'd keep their home. He'd give Emma the stable life she deserved. He just didn't know how. On Friday morning, Marcus received an email that changed everything. The subject line read, "Job opportunity at Anderson Tech Corporation." Marcus's first thought was that it was spam or some cruel joke. He'd been fired from Anderson Tech. Why would they be emailing him about a job opportunity? He opened the email anyway. It was from someone named Elizabeth Anderson, CEO of Anderson Tech Corporation. Marcus's breath caught. Elizabeth Anderson, the pregnant woman from the subway. But CEO? That couldn't be the same person. Anderson Tech was a massive company worth billions. The chances that he'd help the actual CEO were impossible. The email was brief. "Mr. Johnson, I would like to speak with you about a position at Anderson Tech. Please come to the executive floor at 2 p.m. today. Ask for me at reception. Elizabeth Anderson." Marcus read it 3 times, his hand shaking. This had to be her. The same Elizabeth. But how had she found him? And why now? 2 weeks after he'd been fired. He had nothing to lose. Marcus put on his best shirt, wrinkled but clean, and took the subway downtown. The same subway where he'd helped Elizabeth. The same platform where his life had fallen apart. At 1:55 p.m., Marcus walked into the gleaming lobby of Anderson Tech. The building was all glass and steel, modern and intimidating. He felt out of place in his old clothes among the business professionals in their expensive suits. "I'm here to see Elizabeth Anderson," Marcus told the receptionist nervously. The receptionist's eyes widened. "The CEO? Do you have an appointment?" "She emailed me." Marcus showed his phone. The receptionist made a call, spoke quietly, then nodded. "Take the elevator to the 25th floor. Someone will meet you there." Marcus's heart pounded as the elevator rose. What was happening? Why did the CEO want to see him? The elevator doors opened to a luxurious executive floor. A woman in a business suit greeted him immediately. "Mr. Johnson, please follow me." She led him down a hallway lined with windows overlooking the city. At the end was a large corner office. The door was open. Elizabeth Anderson sat behind a massive desk, visibly pregnant, looking healthy and radiant. She smiled when she saw him and stood up, carefully, hands supporting her belly. "Marcus," she said warmly, "thank you for coming." "Ms. Anderson," Marcus stammered. I had no idea you were the CEO when I helped you." "I know. That's what made it so meaningful." Elizabeth gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Marcus sat, feeling completely out of his depth. "I'm confused. Why am I here?" "Because I owe you an explanation and an apology," Elizabeth said. "After you helped me that day, I spent several days in the hospital. Low blood pressure, as I suspected. The doctor said if I'd fallen and hit my head, I could have had a brain bleed. You quite literally saved my life and my baby's life." "I was just doing what anyone would do," Marcus said. "That's not true, and you know it," Elizabeth replied. "The platform was crowded. People walked past me. Only you and one elderly woman stopped to help. And only you had the strength to catch me when I fell. I'm glad you and the baby are okay," Marcus said sincerely. "We are, thanks to you." Elizabeth paused. "When I got home from the hospital, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I wanted to thank you properly, maybe give you a reward. So I had my team track you down. Do you know what we discovered? Marcus's stomach dropped. That I was fired. That you were fired for being late because you stayed to help me, Elizabeth said, anger flashing in her eyes. I looked into it immediately. I spoke with your former supervisor, Mr. Stevens. He confirmed that you called to explain the situation, and he fired you anyway. No consideration. No investigation. Just termination. I had been late before, Marcus admitted, twice that month. I read your file. Elizabeth said, you were late twice because your daughter's school had emergencies. Once you was sick. Once there was a lockdown drill that ran long. Both times you called ahead. Both times Stevens wrote you up anyway. And the third time, you were late because you saved the CEO's life. She leaned forward. Marcus, I don't tolerate cruelty in my company. Stevens was fired this morning. Marcus's eyes widened. You fired him? Because of me? Because of his lack of humanity, Elizabeth corrected. This is a company I built with my late father. We have values. Compassion is one of them. Stevens violated those values. You exemplified them. Elizabeth stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city. When I started this company with my father, we made a promise. We built something that treated people like human beings, not resources. Somewhere along the way, as the company grew, I lost touch with what was happening on the ground floor. Managers like Stevens were making decisions that went against everything we stood for. She turned back to Marcus. You reminded me what kind of company this should be, what kind of leader I should be. I don't understand, Marcus said. What are you saying? I'm saying I'd like to offer you a position, not in data entry, as my personal assistant. Marcus's jaw dropped. Your personal assistant? Ms. Anderson, I don't have the qualifications for that. You have exactly the qualifications I need, Elizabeth said firmly. You're reliable. Your record proves that. You're compassionate. You prove that on the subway platform. You think quickly in emergencies. You're a parent, which means you understand work-life balance. And most importantly, you're someone who does the right thing even when it costs you everything. The salary is $120,000 a year, Elizabeth continued. Full benefits. Flexible hours, so you can drop off and pick up Emma from school. A company car. And if you're interested, we have an on-site daycare and after-school program for employees' children. Marcus couldn't speak. Tears welled in his eyes. $120,000? That was more than triple what he'd been making. That was life-changing money. Why? Marcus finally asked. Why me? You could hire anyone. Because 2 weeks ago, when my baby and I needed help, you didn't see a CEO or a wealthy woman. You saw a human being in trouble. That's rare, Marcus. In my world, most people see my title before they see me. You saw me. I would have helped anyone, Marcus said. Exactly, Elizabeth smiled. That's who you are, and that's who I want working beside me. Marcus wiped his eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Elizabeth said. Start Monday. Bring Emma to see the daycare. I think she'll love it. Yes, Marcus said, his voice breaking. Thank you. Thank you so much. 3 months later, Marcus sat in Elizabeth's office, reviewing her schedule for the week. He'd adapted to the job quickly, surprising even himself with how natural it felt. Elizabeth was demanding but fair, brilliant but kind. Working for her was challenging and rewarding. The best part was the time with Emma. He'd drop her off at school every morning, picked her up every afternoon, and she spent those in-between hours at the company's after-school program, doing homework and making friends with other employees' children. One afternoon, Elizabeth called Marcus into her office. She was on maternity leave now, her baby girl born healthy and perfect 3 weeks earlier, but she'd stopped by to show off baby Grace to the office. Marcus, I wanted you to meet someone, Elizabeth said, holding her sleeping daughter. This is Grace. Grace, this is Marcus, the man who saved us. Marcus looked at the tiny baby, so peaceful in her mother's arms, and felt overwhelmed with emotion. This little life existed because he'd made a choice. because he'd stopped to help, because he'd missed his train. "She's beautiful," Marcus said softly. "She is," Elizabeth agreed, "and she's here because of you. Every smile, every giggle, every milestone she'll ever have. It's all because you acted with kindness when it mattered most." "I'm just glad I was there," Marcus said. "So am I," Elizabeth said. "And I promise you, Grace will grow up knowing what you did. She'll know that kindness isn't weakness, that helping others is always the right choice, that real strength is stopping when everyone else walks by." As Marcus returned to his desk, he thought about how much his life had changed. 3 months ago, he'd been desperate, unemployed, facing eviction. Now he had a career, stability, and the ability to give Emma the life she deserved. All because he'd helped a stranger on a subway platform. That evening, Marcus picked up Emma from the after-school program. As they walked to the company parking garage where his new car waited, Emma asked, "Daddy, are we still going through a tough time?" Marcus smiled and lifted her onto his shoulders. "No, princess, we're not. We're going through a wonderful time, and it's going to keep getting better. Because Ms. Anderson gave you a job?" "Because Ms. Anderson gave me a chance," Marcus corrected. "But really, princess, things got better because I helped someone who needed help. And she remembered. She didn't forget the person who helped her, and that made all the difference." "So helping people is always good?" Emma asked. "Always," Marcus said firmly. "Even when it costs you something, even when it seems hard, helping people is always the right choice." That night, after putting Emma to bed, Marcus sat on his apartment balcony, a much nicer apartment now, in a better neighborhood, and thought about the journey that had brought him here. He'd been fired for doing the right thing. He'd faced homelessness. He'd struggled to feed his daughter. But he'd never regretted helping Elizabeth. Even in his darkest moment, he'd known he'd made the right choice. And now, impossibly beautifully, that choice had been rewarded. Marcus pulled out his phone and sent Elizabeth a text. "Thank you again for everything. You changed our lives." Her response came quickly. "You changed mine first. Never forget that." Marcus smiled. He thought about baby Grace, sleeping peacefully in her nursery, unaware that she existed because a stranger had stopped to help her mother. He thought about Emma, sleeping down the hall, who now had stability and security because her father had chosen compassion over convenience. And he understood something profound. Kindness isn't just good for people you help. It's good for you. It shapes you into someone worth being. Someone who can look in the mirror and be proud of who they see. Years later, when Emma was older, Marcus would tell her the full story of that day on the subway platform. How he'd helped a pregnant woman and lost his job. How that same woman had been the CEO and had given him a career that changed their lives. "But Daddy," Emma would ask, "what if she hadn't been the CEO? What if she was just a regular person, and you lost your job for nothing?" And Marcus would smile and say, "Then I still would have been the kind of person who stops to help someone in need. And that princess is worth more than any job. Because at the end of the day, we're not defined by what we have. We're defined by what we do when no one's watching, by the choices we make when helping someone costs us something." Marcus had seen Elizabeth, not as a CEO or a wealthy woman, but as a pregnant mother who needed help. And in seeing her that way, he'd seen his own humanity clearly. That's not just kindness. That's character. And character, unlike jobs or money or status, can never be taken away. It's who you are when everything else is stripped away. It's the core of you, unchangeable and true. Because kindness isn't just an action. It's an investment in the kind of world we want to live in. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to make that investment, even when you can't afford it, life invests back in you. That's not luck. That's karma. That's grace. That's what happens when you choose humanity over convenience, compassion over self-preservation, love over fear. And it's always, always worth it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video. It helps us share more beautiful stories like this one. Oh, also, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories about love, kindness, and fate. Thank you for watching. And tell us in the comments, do you believe everything happens for a reason?